No time to wonder if Priest had heard my small avalanche and was coming. I had to get out. I went at a crawl, head first. My behind stuck, but it pulled free. My legs were through, and I was out. I stood, panting. Bits of concrete dropped like rain from my hair. I spat out grit. Where was I, anyway? What if I just crawled from one cell into another? The match I lit showed me a long, dusty corridor that seemed to run the length of the row of cells directly behind them. There were a couple of old buckets and dried up straggle of mop that looked as if it had been standing there for the past 20 years. I thumped once on the back of Biddy's cell as I eased past it. Then I edged along, feeling with my hands on the wall. It moldered, dusty at my touch. There was a faint, faint glow far ahead. The light at the end of the tunnel, I thought crazily. I slithered forward through cobwebs that spun themselves around my face, over things that crunched and crumbled under my feet. The corridor ended at the stairs and what seemed to be a barless cell. I cut my hand around another match and saw a rusted piece of pipe with a shower head still attached. This had been a small bathroom. There was little left now but the gratings in the floor. The outside wall had partially collapsed. That was where the glow had come from. The night outside was lighter than the deep darkness inside these thick barred walls. The free, wonderful outside. I picked up the piece of pipe and weighed it in my hand. It was heavy as lead. It probably was lead. Then I scrambled over the crumbled wall. In a second, I saw the sky, bright with stars between patches of cloud, the path, and Priest. His back was to me as he sat at the edge of the path, looking down over the drop below to the bend where Maxie and Cowboy would reappear, maybe had reappeared already. Music thumped softly from the black box beside him. The lantern was off, set close to his right hand. I tightened my grip on the pipe and crept up behind him. I'd promised myself what I would do to this fat little creep when I got the chance, and now I had the chance. I stood behind Priest's unsuspecting back with the pipe raised, and I thought about Biddy and me and what was at stake, and I brought the pipe down on the back of his head. He fell forward, rolling down the steep, grassy slope, coming to a stop by a stubby bush. I scrambled after him. I should hit him again, I knew, because I hadn't hit him hard enough the first time, and he was moving. He shook his head from side to side as if he was dazed. Cripes! He might even get up, but I couldn't hit him again. It just wasn't in me. He was lying on his back, groaning, so I rolled him over on the mound of his stomach. Then I yanked the string from my hood, pulled his wrists behind him, and tied them tight. "What are you doing?" he muttered. "Who's this?" "Shut up," I said. I fished the ice pick from his pocket and slid it into mine. It wasn't easy getting Priest's belt from around the top of his black pants. I had to half lift him to pull it free from the front loops, and he felt as if he weighed 300 pounds. I straddled his legs while I drew the belt tight around his ankles. No kidding, that belt was long enough to circle the waist of a small elephant. His glasses had slipped down on one ear, so I threw them away in the long grass. Without them, he couldn't go anywhere. I should gag him, too, I knew, in case he yelled. But I'd have to be super careful. A gag has to be placed just right, or it can choke a person. I pulled off one of his cruddy shoes and took the sock from his foot. Phew! The sock stretched enough for me to knot it behind his head. It wasn't as tight as it should be, but it would take Priest a while to wiggle it loose. As soon as I straightened, I saw Cowboy and Maxie coming up the path. No flashlight. The battery must have died out completely by now. The two of them were already at the second bend and moving at a fast clip. I looked at them, and I knew it was decision time. I could race back to the cell block, pull the lever, and let Biddy out. Together, we could try to make it around them and down to the ranger hut. But they'd still be free and able to chase us, maybe get us and Maybelline too. The other thing I could do was hide here till they passed, sitting on Priest's fat head the way I'd sat on his brother's 10 lifetimes ago. Then I could beat it to the ranger station myself. But what about Biddy? Cowboy and Maxie would have time to get to her. They'd find me gone, and they'd drag her out of the cell, take her with them as hostage, or worse. Or I could. That or made me sweat, crouched there in the cold night air. I breathed hard, watching them. Cowboy's ponchos swung savagely as he loped along his long leg stride. He looked as if he were ready to explode. Beside him, Maxie danced and pranced, leaping along like a crazy gazelle. That was when I made my decision. It was going to be the or. I wanted to get the two of them myself.